Welcome back to the Susana Gibb Show. Today, I'm joined by my fellow BNI member, Bryan Doyle, who is the executive director of Metro Relief. They are a nonprofit tackling the homeless crisis. I have a question about that. We'll get to that in a minute. With grit and compassion. Bryan has led efforts here in Dallas and abroad, which we're also going to talk about that. And he knows what it takes to build trust, gain rapport, break cycles of poverty. Cycles of poverty. Bryan knows how to break cycles of poverty and rally people around a mission. So thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Susana.
Yes. You may not know this, but I'm going to give a quick insurance tip while we're at it. But from our sponsor, Give Insurance Services, before we jump in to talk about what we're going to talk about. The cost of nails just went up. It was just in the paper over the weekend. And while the cost of nails, it's like, what's one nail, right? The average house takes almost 40,000 nails. So if the price of nails doubles, what does that do to your building costs? What does that do to your reconstruction costs and the cost that you have to rebuild for? Now, at Give Insurance Services, we are trying to pay attention to all of that so we can help serve your referrals and our clients in the best way possible. Shop markets, find the best coverage at the best rates. Thank you again for trusting us, and thank you for being here. Okay, now, Bryan, first things first, I want you to keep me honest because I need you to tell me, are we homeless or are we unhoused? And how do we use those phrases so we can be, not have people throw eggs at us?
Very good. Both terms are still very good
Okay.
to utilize. I think there's a trend shifting to unhoused. I think there is a little bit of stigma for people who are actually homeless to be called homeless, but it's gone through a whole cycle where the tramp, hobo, homeless, it's evolved in its name and phrasing, but both still reflects an accuracy.
So you can't, if you use them as a noun, like you are homeless. Actually, that's what an adverb, right? So if you're labeling somebody homeless, that's not good.
There is an emerging tendency that says we don't really like to be labeled as someone who doesn't have a home.
Okay.
So I don't want that term.
Okay.
But so there's been a shift to unhoused, which seems to be less directive to that, and it's less the individually owning it.
Can you say homeless crisis or is
Yes.
it unhoused crisis?
Yeah, it's both work. There's nothing too adverse about both of those.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Now,
Great.
I just want to make sure that I say it right. So I'm just going to read something I pulled off your website about Metro Relief because I love it. Rain or shine, we serve on the bus. Every week, our staff and volunteers take our mobile resource buses out to build relationships by providing food, clean water, socks, hygiene kits, and prayer to our friends on the street. Metro Relief isn't just serving meals on water. And this is me. You're like a party bus.
Mm.
You're a party bus.
Yeah, we are.
You're piling in. And I looked at all these pictures on your website. You've got volunteers piling in with food, socks, compassion. Everybody's smiling. I'm like, I think you guys need a disco ball on your butt.
We do. It's a good talk.
Have you ever brought a dance party out?
No, but we play music on the bus. So yeah, that's quite intriguing. And then we play games on the bus. Because sometimes we kind of do silly name games where people have to remember everyone else's name in some kind of, which is, if you've got a bad memory, it's the worst game in the world. You hate, you want to sit in the right position so you don't get to be the last person, that kind of thing. But it's just it's an interactive get to know you experience, really, at the end of the day.
And so who's on the bus?
Who's with us? We got our casework teams, 3 or 4 of those, our driver, and then we will have a corporate group, a church group, a boys or girls organization, or that will turn up en masse, 10 or 15. We can take up to about 17 people on the bus at any given time. So yes, the party bus is broken up into 3 segments. You've got a food truck, in effect, in the middle. You've got a volunteer section that holds about 17, 18 with the driver. And then you've got all the resources at the back of the bus, hygiene kits and socks and blankets and clothes and everything else. So yeah, it's a three things going on the bus when it's on the road.
And tell how the bus serves the communities.
So the bus is big, orange and blue. It's a 1984 Crown bus. It's kind of funky. It's got a bit of a retro look to it, which is kind of brings a smile when you see it anyway. But I think it's a relationship builder primarily, because I think people are incredibly vulnerable in these spaces. And so having something that has familiarity, that has a sense of care, when we bring the bus in, people come towards the bus as opposed to going away from the bus. You know, we're not an authoritative vehicle that's giving any level of dread or concern. So I think it's all about building relationships, because people are very, they're incredibly vulnerable and very anxious. As when you are trying to approach them about a particular need or concern, they're not running towards you. So for the bus, it's a great relationship builder.
What other programs? Because I know you have other programs besides the bus, because you're providing an immediate need, right? These people need water, socks.
Yeah.
But it's also, there's an ongoing need that you guys are serving too.
Unquestionably. So the bus is just really the front end, tip of the spear. This is who we are. But throughout the week, we have a pathways team or a case management teams that are going out, finding individuals and then navigating them through the process to try and get them off the street into some kind of health and healing going forward. So it's a two-way, or it's two wings. The wing of the bus is getting volunteers and organizations involved in what we do. And then our case management team are literally doing the gritty work on the street with every individual that has to navigate unique circumstances, because they're all different.
So homeless is kind of a tough topic. You know, this is your whole world. How do you manage your mindset and keep your spirits up? Because I know when I see somebody standing on the side of the road, they're living real rough. They seem like they are suffering from a mental addiction of some sort. And they've been living on the street for a while, which it's depressing for me, but I can then drive away in my air conditioned car and move on with my day. But this is your whole day. How do you manage that?
That's a great insight, actually. So yeah, it is filled with trauma. It's filled with a sense of ongoing despair as you connect with people. There's no doubt that it can even mess with your own mental health, never mind just their mental health. But I think we have wins, and those wins always are it's like the golf shot that works, you know. You always want to bring you back, because there are successes. And over the last 10 years, we've seen around 2,500 individuals that have got literally off the street, lying in a dumpster, to are now in accountable living in a home and doing life as it should be intended. So that navigation kind of keeps us sane and focused. There are people unquestionably every day that sabotage their life and blow up their world in a moment. And that breaks your heart and can break the heart of our team. But they are pretty relentless. They're pretty focused on giving people options. They're just looking for that one win. That one willing and able person is going to say, willing and ready and able person is going to say, please help me. And then we can help them. And those are the wins. Yeah.
So I'm curious about this. And I'm thinking about, now that you've been in our D&I chapter for a while, and Ivan Misner came up with this whole giver's gain concept, which initially, I think probably when he came up with it was really just about giving business, but there is the science of giving, right? The dopamine hit that you give when you are giving back. Are you high on dopamine like all the time, or does it offset?
Yeah. No, human like anyone else. So there's moments when you're frustrated and deeply. But I do think there is a rhythm to a good life, and that is a receiving and a giving. And whatever that rhythm is, if you just receive and don't give, that, I think you get some kind of cancer, something stagnates in your spirit. And so you always are consciously reminded of blessing and grace in your own life. So you want to kind of give that back. When I see people on the streets of Dallas in the context that they're in, which is almost is third world at times. I've seen better places in Sierra Leone or Haiti, you know, that have better conditions than they're living in. And then I'm conscious of just grace and favor in my own life. It's hard not to give back conscious of all that you've received personally. So I think we live in that rhythm or in that tension all the time.
I've always been kind of fascinated by the cycle of poverty. Idea is that people get comfortable being where they're at, and if you're already starting in a place where there's not a ton of support, it can lead a lot faster to being homeless. And you obviously see poverty and homelessness at an up close level. What is something that you wished people knew more about or understood better about what it's like?
Yeah, wow, what a great question. I think the sense of community uh, that brings about accountability is a necessary component for individuals because nobody talks to them. They are the forgotten people. They are the invisible people. We've even got a regime that wants to hide them away from other people, like the lepers biblically, you know. And so when they find intentional community and a smile and a handshake and a hug, then it brings just that moment of aspiration. Could it be? And one of the questions we ask people on the street is not, how did you get here? Because that's full of despair, you know.
Mm.
But we often ask them, where should you be? Which is a far more aspirational question. Like, you clearly shouldn't be here. This is not where you planned to be. This is not where you wanted to end up. Um, and that where should you be leads to them aspiring a little bit of the possibilities of what they could have and what it used to be like. And oftentimes that's around relationships or breakdown or regrets or decisions they made. And oftentimes it's just they're angry because of the situation they find themselves in. So bringing aspiration and then creating accountable community around people, it means they can thrive really quickly. And it's fascinating and wonderful to see how fast they can get out of that cycle into something that's far more determinative and wonderful.
I love the where should you be? Because there's a psychological component to that, which
There is.
as far as imagining where you should be, but making the brain start to work on what needs to happen to get there.
Yeah.
That's really, that's really good. So you talk about hiding people away. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is how the city of Dallas recently updated their guidelines. And the current guidelines say, and I'm going to read them because it was, um, I'm sure you've heard of them, but I'm going to read them. These guidelines include a 24-hour advance notice on feeding events hosting 75 or more individuals, providing trash bags for cleanup after the work is complete, wearing disposable gloves, using hand sanitizer as needed, and transporting food in clean containers, which is now enforcing this to encourage, it says homeless people, but I'm going to say unhoused, and those who serve them to stay away from downtown as part of its broader initiative to revitalize the urban core ahead of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. What do you think about that?
Yeah. It's a very similar rhetoric to any other kind of country or context to where even the World Cup or the Olympics are served, is that there's ahead of time. We don't, we want to put the best view of our city on display. Therefore, anything that's unhelpful or untoward, then we want that out of sight. And it's kind of it's a sad reflection on humanity, really, at the end of the day, because these are real people with genuinely real needs. And if they'd have addressed that in the long term, is trying to figure out a short term visual, optics issue, then it might have been, it's got a tinge of sadness to it. At the end of the day, where we're not really getting to grips with the real issues that people have to deal with when they're living on the street. So yeah, it's kind of sad. I will say this, that despite those rules and regulations, no homeless people are reading those. They don't access online those. There's no big billboard up telling them these conditions. And so again, it's from an optics point of view, it's nice to put that and publish that for someone to see as, oh yeah, they're doing something about that. But at the end of the day, in real terms, people will just do what they do every day. And not much will change in reality.
It's obviously not new that FIFA comes to a city or the Olympics have come to a city. This is happening for years and years and years, and yet there's the continuous let put the homeless away. Are there not lessons to be learned from other cities on ways like, is everybody just doing the same thing again and again?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, if you are just doing a camera pan over a city, and predominantly you're going to get people in country for FIFA, probably around 1 million people are going to end up in Dallas. There's 7 or 8 games during the tournament next year. So that's visual, and they'll reflect and take testimonial away. But really, the optics are the billion people that are watching it on television around the world, and what it suggests about a city in the future, tourist opportunities to be back in that city. So a good reflection on that was Sydney. Sydney went through the roof post the Olympics in 2000 because the visual impact of those games, and nobody really knew that there was significant removal of both homeless and displaced people groups around, and in Aboriginal groups around Sydney, that they had to put in place before. That's not the story that's told, but at the end of the day, the same things are going forward. X number of years later, 25 years later, we're still doing the same thing. We're trying to get people that are undesirable out of sight, and still going on. So kind of sad, but it is what it is.
Seems like Photoshop could probably accomplish a lot easier than moving people.
Possibly.
But so this is a good transition because you have been all over the world in many different places. And you talk about Sydney, and you've been in leadership here, you've been in leadership abroad. Talk a little bit about all the places that you've been first.
Sure. Yeah. So UK born in the north of England, studied engineering, had a different track I was going to go, and ended up in kind of vocational, kind of Christian mission space.
Is that when you were a pastor?
I was, yeah. And so I did study theology, went to Africa actually to work in kind of, with the hope that I could work digging wells, because I was working as a chemical engineer. So wanted to dig wells and create clean water, which is a big issue in Africa. So I thought that was going to be the track, but then ended up kind of developing young people, working in a local church, studied for that, and in that space. So lived in South Africa. Very interesting season for me because I lived in South Africa as it transitioned in that kind of post-apartheid era into the Mandela years and into a new government and a new constitution. So it was an amazing place to be over those 8-9 years, watching a country change so dramatically. It was pretty great. Met my wife there, had our first child there. Then we moved back to the UK. So I was in leadership in London in a large kind of church space and working with a nonprofit. And then equally, after 9 years, I then jumped to the US, which I've been here 17 years, which is even hard to imagine. But I have been here bringing up my kids and being involved in multiple different nonprofits. A lot of them around displaced people groups or poverty initiatives. And that's why I've ended up, leading Metro Relief in this space, because it's paramount to my heart for people who don't have a home or are out of their own context or displaced because of conflict, etc.
This is kind of a two-parter question, and it might be one, but it might be two. It might even be three, because I'm curious. You've obviously, cultures are different, UK, South Africa, United States, and you're in organizations in each of those places. Has your leadership style changed? I would assume both from experience, but also from the different places that you've been. Can you talk about maybe an experience you had in the UK that is very different from an experience you had in South Africa to even the US?
Sure. Yeah, it's great. I think in an African context, whether we like it or not, in a post-colonial context, autocratic leadership was still very much the order of the day. You didn't work with someone, you worked for someone. And there was a clear line management process of somebody being in charge of you, and you exercised a certain authority within a context. Then, of course, going to the UK, I found this whole notion of empowered leadership. It was a lot flatter, less of a pyramid involved, less of a triangular involved, and I think that was pretty great to learn then to shift. Oh, this is about developing people into their potential, as opposed to I've got a name and a title which gives me authority. Therefore, I'm telling these people what they should get done. And then into American culture, it's been some of it's been mixed, because I've been around kind of autocratic leadership, founder leadership, someone who's just, it's their child and you kind of following a pattern around them. And then I've also, and particularly my own particular bend is, of course, is an empowered kind of context, what they call have you ever heard of a Dorothy leadership model? So there's a great conversation about the Wizard of Oz, because the Wizard of Oz, at the time it was written, it was alpha male, big America in the sense of the 20s, 30s, very alpha male led. And yet here comes this story from out of nowhere about a woman, about a girl. She's the youngest. And yet, of course, the film is titled The Wizard of Oz, but he only turns up for the last 20 minutes of the movie. The whole movie is led by a girl who doesn't even know where she's going herself, but she brings these characters along with her, and they skip along this road towards this outcome. And that Dorothy leadership model, I've never forgotten that illustration of how you invite people along with you that all have needs or gifts, and you go together. We're in this process together, and you kind of naive yourself. You kind of like, I don't know. I'm trying to still get up to Kansas myself. I haven't figured that out yet. But let's go together because I heard that there's a way. That Dorothy leadership model is like, let's do this together. Let's collaborate. Let's learn. Let's complement gifting alongside each other. Has been a wonderful experience and continues to be our model at Metro.
I love that.
Yeah.
This is totally unrelated, but just because I just saw it, I saw a thing. I'm sure Juan is our producer, and I'm sure Juan has seen this one, but it's a little meme, and it's like, The Wizard of Oz is about a girl who arrives in an unknown place, kills somebody, teams up with 3 other people to go on a journey to kill another person.
Yeah.
I was actually Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz when I was
Oh, you in?
I was. It was so fun. I loved
Fantastic.
it. But that's the Dorothy leadership model.
And I think that the interesting thing about Dorothy is she invites these people that all have unique needs. And I think there's something wonderful about that. Like they all had an outcome, and they all had a specific need, but this collaborative, this corralling of them, let's go together. And they start inviting each other is a wonderful thing. And as a good leader knows how to develop leaders who invite others into leadership. It's a great thing.
Have you always felt that way, or is that something that you developed as a leader?
I think in the early days, I think when the identification of whether you have influences, I remember sitting in a circle. It could have been in a Bible study or something like that, or a discussion group, even at a youth level, where suddenly everybody's looking at you, and you go like, "Why are you? Nobody made me the leader. Why are you looking at me?" There's something in that people go, "Well, we think he should speak," And I think I identified that early on and recognized, there's a spirit of influence here, and I've got to really shepherd this thing really well, because clearly people think I have something to say, even though all that misconfidence was like, I don't think I've got anything to say. But for some reason, people are giving me the chair. And I think that's been the journey. And I think I've evolved towards this. I think my temperament aspires to be collaborative and to develop people. I love that notion. And even as a pastor, that was always about the development of people and their potential. So whether in industry or whether in nonprofit world, I'm always looking to kind of untap the best of people, or to see primarily the best in them, even if they don't see it themselves. I think part of the tasking is to really nurture and encourage, and encourage means to push courage into someone. And I think to give courage is a great thing as a leader. So I'm kind of there. I don't think I'm ever going to shift from that model. Probably taken 30 years for it to evolve. But yeah, that's the best of me.
Can you share a moment when you ate it, you failed, you hit dirt, you were like, man, I screwed that one up pretty good and how you learned from it.
Wow. I had a moment, 15, 20 years, I don't know, a couple of them actually, where someone I'd made myself accountable to literally said this to me. I think they said, Bryan, I think you're heading for a train smash. And it was like the most sobering. I mean, it was like gut wrenching because it was someone I trusted, someone I loved. I hated them when they said it because you do. You don't like to hear those kind of things. But I was clearly had some blind spots and I was ignoring them. Whatever that was at the time, there were certain things I was not giving attention to because I was the leader and I had the vision and I had the responsibility, but I clearly wasn't watching the rearview mirror or the side mirrors. And that meant that I just was going to pursue something without those checks and balances. And yeah, I kind of messed up and nearly had that train smash. I think I derailed the train for a seat, but I didn't smash it. But I was grateful. And I look back at that moment of rebuke in my life, and I'm very grateful that I'm very grateful the people in my life who said, Bryan, don't be a moron. Why are you doing this? And they've saved my life, probably those people.
I love that you call it a train smash. It's such like a UK way to say it because
you got
we call it a train wreck. It's a train smash. It works the same though.
I guess it does.
Accountability is important. Do you have people that still hold you accountable, or are you holding yourself accountable at this point?
No, I do have 2 or 3 people in my life that are given carte blanche opportunity to say, what the hell are you doing? At any given point, and will pull me aside and speak honestly because they have no dog in the fight or skin in the game. They have no outcomes for themselves. They're just interested in myself or my wife, my family. And yeah, they're very valuable. But, when you think you're messing up and they'll soon tell you, that's kind of sobering sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, there's those people you're like, no, they are not here to kiss your ass.
Nope.
And it does you no favors if they do.
No favors at all. Whew, absolutely not. And yeah, as I say, because of those past experiences, I'm just my radar is always thinking someone's going to call me to account on this issue. And I think that's a good thing. It's a healthy way to live.
So I did not have this question prepped whatsoever. And I think in general, I know that you're not supposed to talk about religion or politics
Sure.
in polite conversation. And I'm not going to talk about politics because I can't, no, but I love talking about religion. Can you talk a little bit about your time as a pastor? What kind of church it was? What kind of religion do you still practice?
Sure.
Um,
Wow, that's been a journey. But yeah, I mean,
it is. Your whole life is a journey. It's a big, big, fat relationship.
It is. I think that I encountered what I would determine as vital faith when I was 16 or 17, where actually faith became a personal understanding that there was actually somebody who directly cared for me. And I wasn't raging on the fact that I grew up under a certain culture or religious culture, but that for a whole set of reasons, it's the first time I kind of encountered the idea that there was someone who loved me and I could know of that person, and he was my creator. And he had an interest in me. That's the first encounter. And then I journeyed through that, and that means you're wrestling with doctrine and scripture and story and all of that. And some of that was good. I think I'd be interested to say that I probably studying theology, not sure helped me because once I'd got all that downloaded, it took me a bunch of years to offload it. Because in those years, they're very formative. So you believe anybody that someone's going to tell you. Some of those things you're going to have to figure out for yourself. So I think I spent some years, particularly under kind of conservative theology, that just really messed with me. I couldn't understand where it was coming from, and then had to go through life experience to realize, some of that was unhelpful for me, and I needed to offload it. And it's taken a while. It's easy to get. They say if you can give someone 3 years, and it'll take them 10 years to offload the 3 years in those formative era, particularly as a young child.
Oh, I had not heard that before. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it takes 10 years to offload 3 years of when you're in your formative year.
And what are considered your formative years?
I guess from 8 to 13.
Okay.
Yeah. If you get someone downloads something in you, a notion, an idea, a theology, a mantra, can take 10,
10
15
years to
years
get
to
rid of.
offload it. Just to figure it out and then offload it.
Mm. So if someone's given hate and fear and racism, and it'll take them 10 years to get rid of it.
If not more. Yeah. Some of that stuff is deeply entrenched. But my journey, so it's been an evolving story along the way. And I came through a kind of Baptist world, which had a conservative framework. It's a bit more liberal in Europe than it is here per se, but still went through that portal of learning and then served in more kind of independent spaces that weren't tied into a denominational kind of allegiance. And then find myself today kind of as a teacher communicator, spending a lot of time in different churches. We have a home church, kind of. We're not there very much.
At Metro Relief, you mean?
Through Metro. Metro's our nonprofit context, but I attend a church in Allen, Texas, intermittently, but a lot of the time I'm in other churches and other spaces talking about Metro.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, so putting in that thing. So I think I think this is going to be controversial. I think America's in trouble in terms of a church world and a religious space for a whole lot of reasons. We won't go into all that because that will take us in a whole new tangent.
That's going to bring in the politics, I think.
I should avoid that.
No, I go controversial. It's fine.
Yeah, it's a mess. And it's hard to watch some of it, what's going on in terms of the rhetoric, in terms of whether it's the association with the flag and the cross is a hard thing to watch because I'm not sure that's where we should have been. And yet, here we are. And it has put a lot of questions in our hearts, in my heart, and an emerging heart, my own kids who are wrestling with their faith when all of this is going on. I think it's a tricky season to really find truth and hope and healing wrapped up. Really, I think the fingernail hang on is Jesus, because clearly his posture and his spirit, his values prevail above all of that. And if I can just hang on to him, I think I'm going to be okay.
What did Jesus say about the unhoused?
It's the most, he said a lot, but the most dramatic notion was that he was homeless himself, a refugee himself. So he knew the cross-border thing. He knew the context of the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head, is a phrase in Luke. And so he knew the notion of not having a place to put his head down and living outside. But also, and then he unpacks these remarkable stories, and you get, of course, the Good Samaritan, which you can glibly read over, but realize here's an individual that religious people walk around or walk past, people with authority walk past, and yet one man picks up a Samaritan who is an outcast, a religious outcast, an undesirable. That's why he's named the Samaritan. The Samaritan performs this act of kindness, takes this man, feeds him, clothes him, houses him, and then checks up on him. There's a whole Metro's modeled on that Good Samaritan behavior of like, let's not just feed someone. That's just for a day. Let's not just clothe someone. That might be for a few days, but let's house them and let's check up on them. Let's see that they're well and that they're thriving. And that describes the best of the Metro model and hopefully our model as human beings, that we act that way.
So I'm going to go back to one of my original questions about the homeless person who comes up to my window when I'm at a light, because there's conflicting things. Some people will say, well, if you give money to that person at the window, you are contributing to the problem. And yet I've heard the stories of Jesus, and I feel like Jesus would tell me to give them money But oftentimes I wrestle with it the whole time without knowing what to do. And so I do nothing. What do you,
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I think the first of all is the notion of driving up to seeing that individual on the side of the road and what goes on in your own spirit and my spirit. Am I looking down at the radio? Am I avoiding eye contact? I mean, what's going on there? That we can't engage humanity in its need anyway. So being prepared is really important for those moments. And being prepared, maybe is not kind of going into the coin drawer and try and find something which may not offer much help. And in turn, if it's at more than $3 or $4, you can get a dose of fentanyl for $3 on the street. So why would you want to do that? And they're very vulnerable people. So yeah, cash sometimes actually is unhelpful. In our urban homeless context, it's unhelpful. In other settings around the world, money can be really helpful. But in our setting, it's not helpful because probably around 60% of our homeless communities are somehow impacted by adverse substance addiction, chronic addiction issues. So you don't want to put them in that increasingly vulnerable space. But preparation is good. Instead of next time you're in CVS or Walgreens, get a Ziploc bag, buy some few travel items like shampoo and a comb and a razor, and stick it in a bag. Put that in your side pocket because that's really helpful and says dignity and love when you hand that out the window. Or get a couple of spare socks and put those down in your cubby hole. Get an extra bottle of water that you take out in the day. So I think it's about preparation to care. You may not have sometimes you'll drive past, feel conviction, go to the CVS, pick up some stuff, drive back to that individual. If you're genuinely concerned, then do that. But give them something that's going to offer dignity and care just for that day. If it's cold, give them something warm that you don't need anymore. But be prepared is kind of the key, as opposed to being spontaneous through the window because I now feel convicted and I want to be a good model to my kids who are sitting in the back seat, whatever's going on there. Would you do it if the kids weren't there? Those are all questions to raise. But be prepared to be a carer of people on the street and have a few of those bags in the back of your car. It won't do you any harm whatsoever.
I love that. That makes me so happy. If people want to find you, how do they find you? How do they help? How do they volunteer? What do they need to do?
Amazing. Great question. You can find me Bryan, Bryan at metrorelief.org. You can go to our website. But one of the great things, which is metrorelief.org, you can most definitely volunteer on a bus. We take about 1,500 individuals on that party bus every weekend, every Friday, every Saturday. It's almost always full. It's incredibly popular. It's really life-changing stuff. You have 3 hours of serving food and giving out items of care, putting an arm around someone, praying with someone if you feel inclined to do that. Just being part of the team. It may be just handing a cup of soup or broth or food that we'll have on hand every time. You come to our office in the morning, we make the soup, make the food, we assemble the items, we do an orientation, and the bus goes out to encampment areas. And it's happened pretty much without fail for nearly 14 years every weekend. You can be part of that. If you email volunteer at metrorelief.org or go to our website, you can book in on the website. We'd love to have you. Of course, there's no money tree out there for nonprofits. So if you want to give and contribute, you can know that your funds are going to go directly to serve the homeless. So all of that's on the website, metrorelief.org.
Is there an age limit? Do you guys let kids on the party bus?
We do let kids on the bus, about 12 or 13, I think, really because there's some areas where it can be unpredictable. Our safety is really of number one priority for us. And our team are very, very good. They've been doing it a long time and taking care of people. But people are unpredictable when there's addiction and when there's anger and adversity and despair involved. You can't predict people's behavior. So sometimes to protect kids, we don't put them in that space. There's needles on the ground. There's all kinds of stuff like that. So you want to be careful with children. But if they're with a parent or a guardian, 12 or 13 on up is absolutely fine.
I did a short documentary for the Housing Crisis Center once, which is a sister organization to you guys. I don't know about sister; they're not related, but
They're a collaborator.
good word. But I went into one of the homeless camps underneath the interstate, and I will admit, I was nervous. I brought my Homeland Security friend to come with me because kind of a big guy. Because I thought, man, they're going to be like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Why do you have a camera here? And they were just people. They were just like, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why? What do you want to talk about? There were some people who were like, we don't really want to talk to you at the camera, but they still talked to me. And I found it so interesting that the dogs didn't bark at me because it's not their space either.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, but it was good. So, and it is life-changing. I am so glad that you took the time to be with me.
Susana, thank you. It's been a joy.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us today. If you are enjoying this podcast, please share it with somebody who might need a freshen up on the cycle of poverty, unhoused, being a good leader. And again, thanks so much. Have a good day. And thank you to Juan for the studio. Good job, Juan. You're amazing. You should come around and say hi, though.
What's up?
Guy Reese produced this podcast, and thank you again to Katie Townend and Shelby Furr and my guest, Bryan Doyle.
Thank you.
That was so good.
Thank you.